All right. Shalom to everybody as you're coming on. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hopefully everybody's doing all right. Grand Rising Chef, Grand Rising everybody who's watching on TikTok or YouTube. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in Yahweh's sight. He is our strength and our Redeemer, and it's in His name, which is His authority, that we pray, praise, proclaim, project, and protect this message. Amen. Forgive me, I am a little tired. Was out a little late. We are ready to roll, though. Minister Tamara, how you doing? Amen. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. We give all honor to the Most High, Yahweh Elohim, who is Abba, Father, Yeshua Mashiach, Ruach HaKodesh. We give all honor to Him for my wife, the Honorable Maya, who lives in life to say to be honored. I give honor to Him for my children, for my family, for our community, for Yashriel, for those who will come on for the first time, for those of you who are returning. We thank you in advance for the likes and the shares and joining the community and helping us with the algorithm. Thank you for the amen, Becky. Hello again, Sister Sharice. We're thankful and grateful to everyone. Getting ready to go through this great, continue this great series that we're going to make sure that we get into, and I'm excited and thankful to be in front of you all again. We're waiting for the podcast to upload so we can get started with that as well. We're going to get into the Sermon on the Mount series, and we're going to get into part 9 on this rising. So we're getting ready for that. Hopefully you guys will join us for that as we keep things moving. Having a little bit of technical issue. Yeah. Having a little bit of technical issue. I don't know what's going on. I can't get certain things to go with the podcast, so we may not have the podcast going this rising. Might have to put this part on. I guess since the Podbean app's not working right now, we might have to go ahead and just do this on YouTube. Let's see. Let's see, what are we doing? Hello to, is it Hoss? Shalom, Beverly, how you doing? Thanks for being part of the community. Wayne. Okay. 7 DNA cycles, all right. Shalom, Jay Murphy, how you doing? Oh, wait a minute. That might be the problem with the podcast. Hold on. Let's see what's going on. All right, let's try this again. I think I know what's been going on. Oh, interesting. It's a Wi-Fi issue. That's why the podcast is not working. Okay, well, we'll see if we can get that fixed. All right, looks like we got that fixed. All right, here we go. Let's try the podcast again. You remember the teaching? All right, awesome. Glad that you do. So as we get started and we're uploading the podcast and getting everybody on here to get on part 9 of the Sermon on the Mount series, remember that you can follow my wife, the Honorable Bloom and Flourish, the Honorable Maya, who lives a life that's able to be honored. She is a herbalist. She is a minister. She is a healer. She is a chemist. She is a biologist by trade, and she helps us to be able to live a healthy existence. You can check her out at Bloom and Flourish, not A-N-D, but the letter N, Bloom and Flourish, the letter N, Bloom and Flourish. You can follow her on TikTok, YouTube, and her website. And we're thankful for everybody who is doing that and helping her and blessing her as she blesses you. Thank you to everybody who is supporting us in so many different ways. Thank you for those of you who are part of Yah's Land Project. Thank you for those who have been a blessing to myself and my family and our community as we continue to grow. We are excited and thankful for another opportunity to be with you. So, looks like we've got the podcast ready to go now. All right, thank you for your patience. We're going to get right into the Sermon on the Mount series. We have this on YouTube, by the way, so if you've missed any of it, or if you want to make sure that you pick up any of these things to make sure that you catch up on where we are, feel free to do so on YouTube. We have this on YouTube for you guys to be able to participate on and catch up with. We have this on our podcast. It's the Kofi of 40 Podcast. My name up top, the Kofi of 40 Podcast. So feel free to join us there. You said, what are your thoughts about the vaccine? Well, basically, we have a lot of thoughts, some of which I can't say in these public forums. We have to say more so on like Zoom and other things that we do, or even in one-on-ones or life coaching things or whatever. I will say that you have the right as a natural person, if you get the legal terms correctly, as a natural person, you have rights to be able to make sure that you protect yourself. And there are certain codes that are worldwide codes. There are certain things that if you realize about, like even the CDC is not even an American entity, so to speak. The CDC actually is a private nonprofit created by 14th Amendment citizen government. And so in even following the CDC and saying Americans must follow it, one of my questions would be, why is it that something that's not American is your standard to tell Americans what to do? And then, of course, the Hippocratic Oath, even though there are some people would go deeper into it to tell you why the Hippocratic Oath is a little tricky. However, I would tell people when it comes to the Hippocratic Oath that you should recognize that if they're saying that they should bring no harm to you, well, then ask them about CR-5 and ask them if it has any laterogenic effects, which means that any harmful effects, basically. And if the answer to both of those is yes, then you can honorably and politely decline, not deny, not refuse, but politely decline taking it. And then, of course, religious exemption, which is allowed, even though businesses now are getting hip to it and saying we don't want to use religious exemption because everybody's using it to get out of taking this vaccine. But just because you don't like it doesn't mean it's not legal. You see what I'm saying? Thank you for the compliment. Is that I'm not sure, is this Niclonea? I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it. So we're going to get into this, though, and make sure that we utilize our time. Shalom Ransom. So we're going to get into this, get back into the series. We're on part 9 of our Sermon on the Mount series. And we're going to start at Matthew chapter 6, verse 1. We're going to go through verses 1 through 4. And then tomorrow we'll get into part 10, which is going to be dealing with the Lord's Prayer. We're going to go Matthew chapter 6 verses 5 through chapter 6 verses 5 through 14 or 5 through 15 tomorrow. But today for part 10, we're focusing on Matthew chapter 6 verses 1 through 4. And we're going to get into part 10 of this series. So thank you once again for joining us on all the platforms, whether you're joining us live or you'll be seeing this later on. We're thankful, we're grateful, we appreciate it. Yes, the locks obviously are free form for the most part. Every once in a while I might pull them apart if I don't want them to lock, but so much. However, yes, I just let my hair grow, which is why before people even say so, the parts that are loose or hanging or dangling or whatever they don't like, that's why it's that way. So we're thankful, we're grateful for everybody being on. Well, apostate, if that's what you feel, there were forgeries or whatever, at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be your standard. So I've heard that theory. That's fine. But once again, we're not even there. Right now, we're in Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. And let's deal with these parts that Yahshua HaMashiach himself is speaking. Okay, and once, thank you, Minister Tamara, for the reminder. If you have questions on TikTok, you can feel free to go ahead and just put them in the question box beneath. If you're watching this later on YouTube, of course, you can at any point just put something in the comment section. I will try to respond as time allows. You can also contact us at the contact information we'll give out at the end. And if you actually want to, you can download the Podbean app, Podbean. And when you download the Podbean app, you can actually download it. Look up the Kofi Footy Podcast, my name, the Kofi Footy Podcast. Subscribe there, and then you can call in. All right, and if you'd like to have a brief conversation, because we have a topic to get through, but if you'd like to have a conversation or ask a question or give a comment, air your concern, etc., you can do so there. We have no problem with that being on, and I just made sure that I turned up the volume. So once you come on with us, you will be loud and clear, so everybody can hear what you are saying. Amen. All right, so here we go. Oh, thank you very much. We appreciate you putting us in the position of that advisory. So, here we go. Right? Well, all right, if that's your way of saying hello, Daryl, hello to you as well. So, we're in Matthew chapter 6 today. Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4 will be our focus. This is part 10 of the Sermon on the Mount series. And Shalom Deshima, what we're talking about, Shalom Miko, Grand Rising, what we're going to speak today specifically is on part 10. Now, to give a quick review, we've already gone through 9 parts of this, so let's go through that real quick. Part 1 we discussed, which is Matthew chapter 4 verses 23 all the way through Matthew chapter 5 verse 12, and that was where we learned that the kingdom of heaven is being introduced. We learned who the kingdom of heaven belongs to. We learned that people are going to come against us. They're going to come against you in life, period, but don't be shocked when people come against you because you disagree with them. Ad hominem is something that's very much so utilized by people who really are not great apologetically, or really aren't great at supporting arguments and views that they have outside of attacking people. Then secondly, after that, we went through Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16. That was part 2, and where we learned that if you're in the kingdom, comprehend that people are looking towards you now, and therefore don't get so caught up and beat up when people are saying all manner of evil against you, just because you're simply representing a viewpoint, especially when it comes to the kingdom. People are so anti-kingdom, so people are so anti-law, people are so anti-law of attraction, laws of the universe. They say they're about them, but they're not. They're against constitutional law. They say that they aren't, but they're not, because how can you be a 14th Amendment citizen and still be part of the Constitution, right? Or the Constitution of the United States, not Constitution of the United States of America. All these different things. Don't know about UCC, the Uniform Commercial Code, all these things. So you're going to be set at a higher standard. Be ready for people to come and attack that. Part 3, Matthew chapter 5, verses 17 through 20. We discussed that, and we made it a point to say specifically that, or Yeshua is speaking, excuse me, we went through the fact that he said that the law matters. He says that he didn't come to destroy the law, but that it might be fulfilled. He said that you need to comprehend every jot and tittle and do not change it. That means every minuscule measurement of it, and make sure that you do not change it, right? Even the way it was written. Then the next part, verse 19, he makes it a point to say that people who say you shouldn't live by the law, but and teach you shouldn't live by it, they are the least in the kingdom. However, people who say that you should live by the law and live by it, they are considered to be the greatest. And then verse 20, he tells us that those who are those of us who are into law need to learn it greater than the scribes and the scribes and the Pharisees. Therefore, really making it a point to say that those who are about writing the law, manipulating the law, trying to make it utilize or use for their own cause, for their own merit, for lifting themselves up, you need to know more than they do, so they don't catch you up in that, right? Or you don't get caught up in that. After that, then we get to Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 26, I believe, which is part 4, which we start learning about being in debt, right? Being in debt to anger, being in debt, period, takes you away from being able to be about any other cause, right? Going back to your citizenship, being sovereignty, and all these different things. So if you're caught up in debt to something else, you can't give to something else. You can't give your gift. You can't give an offering. You can't give a tithe. You can't give what your calling is. You can't give to the community if you're constantly having to give to something else, right? So that was part 4. Part 5, after that, then we went and did a deep dive into marriage, right? You need to make sure that when it comes to marriage, that you were honorable. I believe that was Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 32, right? Then after that, Matthew chapter 5, verses 32 through 37. That's part 6 that we went through. That part taught us about, making sure that we're not swearing. I swear on heaven, I swear on earth, I swear on my mama's grave, I swear on it. He said, you're swearing and all that doesn't matter, right? Thank you, Eric, for that. He said, your swearing on everything doesn't matter that much. He said, let your yea mean yea and your nay mean nay. Let what you're let what you do speak for you, right? right? Let the words that I've said speak for me and all that. That's a great song. However, faith without works is dead. Word without works is dead. Saying something but never doing it and then expecting the reward is dead. So start doing some things different if you want to see some valuable change and some things of value start happening in your life and in your existence, right? Then part, what was it? Part 7. I feel like I'm off. I skipped something. Oh, wait a minute. Today is part 9. I said part 10. That's what. All right, part 9 is today. Excuse me. Part 10 will be tomorrow. That's what I was talking about because I started talking about the Lord's Prayer. Part 10 will be tomorrow. Sorry. Part 8 got us to a place where we realized, okay, don't worry about this whole. Oh no, I'm right. I'm sorry. Because part 8 is where we talked about don't worry about the eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. That's not even our culture, right? So stop looking towards other people's culture. Stop looking towards what other people say, right? This Babylonian Talmudic principle, all these different things, right? This romantic stuff that we're using, this Greco-Roman type stuff, we're using this Persian type stuff, even the Kemetic type stuff goes a little too far into what you're trying to attempt to do, right? Even there's things that you should learn about Kemet, be about it, comprehend that you're part Kemetic if you're even dealing with Yashrei, and even some of your beliefs and even some of the stuff that you write. However, don't get to a place to where you're putting aside the culture, the kingdom, right? The kingdom of heaven is something different than what you're being taught and what you're producing, right? So make sure that you're ready to serve people, and remember that hurt people. So if you're going to help a hurt person, be aware they might swing on you, so to speak. They might hurl insults. They might, on their bad days, try to make your bad days their bad days. All these different things, right? So be ready for that. Is it man-displaining? I guess it's supposed to be mansplaining or something like that. You said you're white. What does that have to do with what I'm saying? I don't know. But welcome to you. Okay. If you're caught up in being white, which isn't even by Black's Law Dictionary an actual thing, an actual status, then you might want to come out of that mentality. White isn't even a color. White used to mean clear, and now people are trying to make it a color because of things that people said. So, if that's your way of saying hello, then hello. Feel free to stick around if you'd like to. Let's see. And then after that, part 9, which we discussed yesterday, that taught us to make sure that we're not sitting here saying we're better than somebody else just because we're a good person or we're this and that or whatever, like all these things or whatever. Like, it rains on the just like it does the unjust. Love has no loophole. Stop trying to find reasons not to love your neighbor or to love somebody that's around you or to give respect to somebody or to say that you're better than somebody, therefore you don't have to be about something, etc., right? Amen. So now that we got all that, we're in part 9 today. Part 9 today is going to come from Matthew chapter 6. We're going to read verses 1 through 4. This is the King James Version. This is not the 1611 King James Version. However, this fits what the 1611 King James Version says. For those of you who want to say this isn't the oldest English version, which, by the way, the 1611 King James Version is not the oldest English version either. But for those of you who need to know that, okay? So here we go, all right? So, Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. This is Yeshua HaMashiach himself speaking, the Christ, the Anointed One, the manifestation of Yahweh here on earth, Yeshua, all right? The one who we should cry out to, Shvai, Yah, cry out to Yah, Yeshua HaMashiach, and he is speaking here. What does he say? He says in chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, this is what he says. He says, take heed that ye do not alms before men, to be seen of them. Otherwise, ye have no reward from your Father which is in heaven. See how he started talking about his Father is in heaven. We just go to our Father which art in heaven, thinking that's the Lord's Prayer. The Father which art in heaven, his throne be in a specific place. We talked about that earlier, right? This is important. So I'm going to read through it. We're going to go back, but see what we've been talking about all this time, how it's coming together. Right, because this is holistic. This is contextual facts. We need context and facts. Don't just talk about this one little word you like here or there. Make sure the context of everything we've been going through works together. If you need to catch up on it, once again, these are all on YouTube. These are all on the podcast, the Kofi of Footy podcast, like my name. Go look that up and catch up with us, or hashtag find Kofi, hashtag FINDKOFI. You can find that on multiple platforms in social media, including That's the actual YouTube channel name, hashtag Find Kofi. We literally just started a whole new YouTube channel. So hashtag Find Kofi, FINDKOFI. All right, here we go. So Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Take heed that ye do not do your alms before men, to be seen of them, otherwise ye have no reward of your Father which is in heaven. Therefore, when thou doest alms, do not sound a trumpet before thee, as the hypocrites or the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But when you doest alms, let not the left hand know what thy right hand doeth, that thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret himself shall reward thee openly. We know that the word of Yah was blessed before we even opened it, and we praise Yah for the word. All right, now let's get into this. So this is talking about your giving, right? The status of your giving, if you will, right? Your giving status. And a lot of people are all of these things that we go through. A lot of people are on their giving status because we're so busy trying to prove to these Pharisees and scribes that we've been talking about, the leadership. Remember, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, they're not just religious leaders. In our culture, they were the leaders. They were the Levites. They were the Levitical priesthood. And Levitical priesthood, you can't be a priest without being royalty. That's why it tells you that you are a royal priesthood. You cannot be a priest in our culture without being royalty. You cannot be a royalty without being a priest, right? So when Yahshua had to wait till 30 years old, because that was what was required in our culture to become a rabbi. For him to be a rabbi, he had to be royalty, right? So he had to be royalty. Therefore, in order for him to be royalty, he had to be a priest. David had to be royalty. In order for him to be royalty, he had to be a priest. He writes the Psalms. Solomon, in order to be royalty, he has to be a priest. He has to write Psalms in the Song of Solomon, right? In our culture, the king is supposed to be the greatest example of priesthood, right? He might not even be the top priest, but he is technically the high priest, right? Like, he might not be the one who does the day of the sacrifice for the Day of Atonement. However, he is the high priest. When Solomon finishes building the temple with everything that his father David leaves him, it doesn't say that he told the religious leaders, the Pharisees, Sadducees, and scribes, to go and gather all the people together and say he made a decree that everybody would come together, and he led them in prayer. Right? He was the one who gave the prayer, right? So in order to be royalty, you have to be a priesthood. That's why it's a royal priesthood. In our language and in the Greek language, there is no distinction between the two. When you see that word royal priesthood, it's one word, right? In English, they had to try and give two words because they're about separating church from state, right? They're about Machiavellian principles by this point, right? Machiavellian principles. I always say Machiavellian, but his name is Machiavelli. Machiavelli is somebody who taught that in order to be a great person, you have to be a bad leader. And in order to be a great leader, you have to be a bad person. And so this is why people still to this day, I didn't know they were doing the work this early. Well, it should be all right. Hopefully it won't be too much noise in the background for you guys. But they taught, okay, good. They're not ready yet. So they taught that in order to be a great person, right, you have to be a bad leader. In order to be a bad leader, you have to be a great person. So that's why you got to still vote for bad people. You've been taught in a culture that says it's okay to have bad people in positions of leadership because, hey, at least they get stuff done. It's all right for Bill Clinton to be putting people in prison and killing them off before he gets ready to run for president so he can tell everybody he's strict on crime. And it's okay for him to do a 3 strikes and you're out rule, to continue the Reagan and this Reaganomics type stuff and this, what's his face? I'm not a crook, Richard Nixon type stuff and all these different things. It's okay for that because, it's okay for him to cheat on his wife because that's something separate. I fell for that. Right? I fell for that too because everybody was teaching us when we were young. Well, does he get the job done? Is he the president? What does the president have to do with how he treats his wife? Right? Because they believe that those are two separate things. That's the culture, right? So, but he says, look, here he's talking about these priests, these people in the Sanhedrin, and he says, in the kingdom, I need you to start separating yourself from some of this leadership and make sure that you live by the law greater than they do. Okay, thank you for the love. He says, and thank you for the likes, thank you for the love, thank you for the shares, thank you for joining the community, all that stuff that helps us with the algorithm. We appreciate you, and thank you for being on with us today. By the way, we're on 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern New York time every rising, and we're on 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time every Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. All right, so thank you for joining us. Okay. So he says specifically, he says, like, Yahshua is speaking of the kingdom. This is a different mentality. He says, you who are in the kingdom, who are supposed to know more law than these Pharisees and Sadducees and scribes, right? We were talked about once again, Matthew 5:20. You should know more than them, because they will try to get you on stuff that you don't know, right? They'll try to get you on what we would call like technicalities or these things like that, right? He says, you should know more than them. You should be greater than them. You should comprehend a lot more than these people do, right? So he says, if you're not in a position where you know more than them, then you need to try and check where you are. You need to check yourself and see what's going on with this, because it doesn't make sense that you wouldn't know more than the person who's using the same law to oppress you. Make sure you know more than they do, right? So here we go. He's going deeper into it. He's taking us into a deeper place. He said, so you who are in the kingdom, you who are the city set on the hill, right? Matthew chapter 5, verse 14. You who are greater things should you do. He says, this is what I want you to comprehend. Take heed that when you do your alms before men. And what did we just come out of? He just came out of talking about the publicans, the tax collectors, the people connected to Rome, the people who Israel could not stand because they were causing them to do stuff that was outside of their kingdom mindset. They were being led by somebody else's culture, and every day was a reminder, hey, how you doing, Mama? Thank you for that, praying for your healing. He said, every day that you're around these people, you're going through some stuff, right? But don't think that you're better than them, because basically you're doing basic stuff. Like you're saying, I take care of my family. Well, they take care of their family too. So don't be mad at the tax collector and say you're better than them if they take care of their family and you take care of your family. Don't be upset with them if you're saying I'm better than them because, I wake up early. Well, they wake up early. Don't be upset with them because they say they're taking your hard-earned money, right? You go to a job. Well, they go to a job. What makes you greater than them, right? Don't talk about the ordinary. Remember the context. We just talked about this yesterday in part 8. The context needs to be there, right? So don't just give out facts without context. If you're both doing the same thing, if it's raining, don't talk about, well, I go outside and I go through my day. Well, it rains on the just and the unjust, just like the sun rises on the person who's going to do great and evil, right? We talked about this yesterday, right? That's the context. So he's saying, you guys keep saying the publicans are bad, right? But what makes you different than the publicans? If you're not doing anything that stands out, right? One of the things that Miles Monroe said that really grasped me and got me to really make sure that I was about what I said is that he said, look, what's the difference between somebody who's ordinary and extraordinary? What's the difference between the ordinary and the extraordinary, right? He said the ordinary does ordinary and the extraordinary does extra. And he said, I learned that if I can do one thing extra, then I'm already extraordinary, right? So imagine if you live a lifestyle of extra, then you will be extremely extraordinary, right? But a lot of people are ordinary. They do the same thing that everybody else does. They do the same thing that their enemies do, who were said we're supposed to love, right? Well, you love what your enemy does because you do the same thing. If you getting drunk and tipsy, right, the same way your enemy does, then don't say that you're better than them. If you out here having multiple women, but then you say, well, they doing us wrong. Well, if they got multiple, and then when they get caught cheating or something, they get caught with multiple women and you ain't been caught yet, you say something, what makes you better, right? Yahshua is making it a point. In the kingdom, we live by a higher standard. We live by a higher decree. We live by a greater thought process. We're not caught up on trying to be the same as everybody else is. We're trying to live by something that is extremely greater. Yeah, Miles Monroe is amazing, right? So, and thank you for all those who are joining the community. Now, so watch this. So getting back to what? Matthew chapter 6. So now that's the context. So here he says, now what's going to separate you? What's going to make you extra, right? What's going to make you go beyond ordinary? What's going to make you go beyond being in the same place that all these people you're saying are terrible are in, right? Amen. Envy not your oppressors, choose none of their ways, right? So here we go. What's going to make you go beyond them? What's going to make it to where you know the law greater than them? What's going to make you live law greater than them? What's going to make you sovereign while they're still public servants? What is he talking about? Matthew chapter 6, verse 1. Take heed that you do not alms before men. Take heed. So I'm doing alms. I'm giving my best. I'm not saying you could never tell anybody. But however, the mindset of giving to somebody should not be, I'm giving to somebody so that everybody can see it. Matter of fact, I didn't even think about this. It's amazing how Yah puts things together. My wife and I told you guys who had class with us that after we finished the class, after 10 p.m. Eastern New York time, we went out. And we went out on the water, and nobody was out there. And in the darkness, with a little bit of nice moonlight and stuff, we were able to enjoy each other's company. My wife had made some food for us, and we had a great time. And when we went to do this, one of the things that was a blessing, it didn't seem like a blessing at the time. We finished and we left, and everything was great, holding hands all the way home, get back to the house, travel back to the house, and realize, she's like, I don't know where my phone is. And then she goes, I think I left it out there. Normally she has her purse on her, doesn't have her purse on her this time, right? So she just has the phone, put the phone down on the bench we were sitting at. So we traveled all the way back. We get to where we were and can't find it. I had her stay in the car because it's, late at night. It's around, midnight at this point. So I'm not going to have my wife out there with me in the midst of, who knows what can happen. It's a nice area, but you don't know what can happen. Phone is gone, though. So I'm running around everywhere we went. I ran to where we parked. I'm literally running. I'm booking it. I'm looking everywhere. I come back. I went to the place we put our stuff in the trash. I ripped open the little, it's one of those things where the trash is supposed to be locked where they can get it later. I went back to hood and, finessed it a little bit, ripped it open, was digging through the trash, can't find the phone. Oh, man. Well, you know what? I'm not going to sweat it. Yah's blessed us. If we just need to get another one, I'll pay for another one, right? Wife can't be without a phone. Can't, unfortunately nowadays everything feels like it's trapped in your phone, and there's a lot of stuff that means a lot of stuff to her personally that's in there that we don't want somebody to have their hands on, this and that or whatever. So prayed about it real quick, let it go, came back. She had seen me running everywhere, so she knew I was looking. I had even FaceTimed it, called it. Something in me said, hey, I even texted just in case somebody had it, was like, hey, if you, how much you want for it. I'm even willing to barter. Okay, how much, if it's worth it, I'll even pay whoever this is because my wife has a lot of memory stuff in this phone, right? No response. Okay. She's calling it on her Apple Watch, right? Or whatever you call it, iWatch, Apple Watch, I don't know. But she's calling it, no response. Okay. This thing's probably gone. She's looking at seeing if she can just delete everything out of her phone through my phone at this point because Verizon is it's late, nobody's answered the phone. All right, we're just gonna have to take this one, and keep it moving. All of a sudden, though, her mom calls because I have been FaceTiming, and so at first our FaceTime is connected to my son's iPad. So basically we look at so he picks up the phone. At first I thought it was somebody outside because it was dark, but it was him in the dark room, waking up out of sleep and, answering. So I was like, okay, just let the phone ring. So she must have seen that we were calling. She calls my wife's phone, and even though nobody answers, my wife's able to answer on her watch. So long story short, my mother-in-law is now on the case. And when my mother-in-law gets on stuff, she's on it. So she's apparently just blowing this phone up, and the person answers, about to get on the bus to be able to go where they are, and says that they have the phone. They says they want to give it to us, right? Now, I'm thinking they just want to give it to us because I just sent a text saying, if you want some money for it, tell me how much you want, blah, blah, right? Sorry, you got to deal with a little testimony, but this is going to bless you in a second with what we're talking about. So we rushed back. We've traveled back and forth from the house to this place a few times already. This guy says he's got it. We weren't quite back at the residence yet, so we turn around, travel back as fast as we can, as legally as we can. But I'll be honest, I'm moving, right? Traveling to get to this phone. Finally, we get back to where we were. I say, I'm like, okay, come with me because I don't know what's going on, but I don't want you to go all the way. Just kind of stay behind me. When we get to a certain place, we know where we're going. Just stay right here. I'm going to go meet this person, whatever. I'm like, you got any cash on you or whatever? Because, I just gave you such and such amount. She was like, yeah, I got this much amount. Okay, I take it, put it in my pocket, and I'm rolling up on the person, right? So I don't know who this person is, so I kind of walking in a certain way and kind of go back to, acting like I'm patting myself a little bit and doing this or whatever as I'm doing stuff. I walk with a little limp and I ain't going, front. I don't have my little kingdom walk. I'm, giving my little, limp, so I can make sure this person know, whatever about me or whatever. I'm 6'5.5" too, so that's nice in the dark and all that, just in case I need to come up on somebody who's about some mess. And talking to him on the phone couldn't really gauge the spirit, right? So I didn't know what was going to happen. We finally get there, and here's the cool part. The Most High really blessed us. The guy basically is like, here you go. Here's the phone. Missed his bus and everything to make sure that he called us. He was getting ready to get on the bus when my mother-in-law finally got in contact with him. He meets up with us and says, yo, I just want to let you know, here's the phone. I know what it is to have had my stuff stolen from me. And I look at him, the man, he ain't said, but I've been homeless before. He looks like he's kept up and everything, but I can tell. Like when you're homeless, you can tell when other people homeless before. So I look at him, I'm like, oh, this man not doing that well, whatever. And he blessed us. And he might have been thinking about keeping the phone because he didn't answer it for the longest. But he told my mother-in-law, I just want, and he told us, I was waiting for somebody to call, and I'm thinking, well, we were blowing up the phone. How were you not answering the phone? However, he was like, no, I just, I know what it's like to have something stolen from me, this, that, or whatever. So I give him, the money that's in my hand, we bless him, and we take it back, right? And then we come back, travel back to the house, and able to unwind. Everything's all right. All is right with the world, right? But in all that I'm saying, that man basically in the midst of the night could have went and sold the phone, could have done whatever. He did his alms. So he gave his alms. He wasn't worried about it. Nobody showed up. Basically, I had my wife stay back because it was, once again, it's after midnight at this point. So I had my wife stay back, and I'm basically meeting up with this man just to make sure that everything's good. And in the middle of the night, he did a great deed. He did us a great service. Saved us a lot of money because I would have had the phone. We don't got to, we rocking with some of the best phones right now. So, we've been blessed to be in a position to do so. So it's going to cost me a lot to get this phone, right? I want to pay off the phone. I don't want to have a debt of still paying off the phone. I want to pay it off. I'm going to get it. So this man blessed us in the midst of us having to do some other things financially too, right? So he did his alms in secret, and the blessing came to him okay, this stuff that I might have used for something else, I could just give you a piece of it, but you know what? Let me just give it to you. Boom. Right? Let me bless you because you did it in secret. So I want you to hold on to that mindset, right? You caught up with it? I want you to hold on to that mindset as we're doing this. This is the spirit of what we're doing. This is the spirit of what we're supposed to be about, right? Bless people, even when you could have done. He could have, even on the street, even being homeless, he could have made $200-300 off that phone because, that phone is not the 13, it's a 12, right? That phone is still expensive, right? So he could have done whatever he wanted with it. He could have taken it somewhere, and he could have jailbroke it, right, and used it for himself if he knew what he was doing, or if he found somebody else that knew what they were doing. He could have went in there and had all types of access to stuff, and if he had a Cash App, could have used Cash App to be able to send money to this and that or whatever. He could have done all that, right? He didn't do it, right? And so I had to. So see, when he did what was righteous and didn't even do it before men, I had to bless him. You see that? I felt obligated to bless him as a king. Another king who could have taken from me decided, hey, king, I got you. Don't worry about it. I'm just doing this because I know what it is to have stuff stolen from me. I had to reach in my pocket and say, no, bro, I can't just let you walk away like that. First of all, you missed your bus. Then I asked him, do you want to ride? Do you need a lift? Right? I need to make sure that you get taken care of. I can't just stop at you gave me a phone and then I put something in your hand. I need to make sure that you're taken care of to where you get to wherever it is. If you don't have a house, are you going to a shelter? Are you going to your girlfriend's house? Are you going to your mama's house? Whatever it is, I need to bless you because you blessed me. You blessed, right? Not only, you didn't just bless me, you blessed me because you blessed my wife. You blessed the person connected to me, and because you blessed the person connected to me, I've got to bless you, and I've got to bless you with more than what you blessed me with, right? You just stayed, you missed the bus, it cost you, instead of it being 15 minutes, it might have cost you 2 hours, right? I need to bless you to where I give you something that will last for a few days. Right? And really that lasting for a few days might help you on the journey that you're on right now, that you're trying to get your life back in order, right? That's what transpired just because he did something where nobody saw it. right? But I have to go past it, right? You said, what was that? Something, oh, well, you went the extra miles, right? And he went the extra mile, so I had to go extra, right? And on top of that, remember, we just talked about this. If there's something legal that happens, right? Legally, we left the phone. Right now, legally, he's not supposed to take it, but hey, we left the phone. It's the wrong is on us. We're the ones in the legal wrong, so to speak, right? We left the phone. Lawfully, we left the phone. Somebody took it. He could do whatever he wants with it, but he decided to do the righteous thing and still remain lawful, right? So lawfully, I'm in his debt as a king. In order to come out of his debt and be the king I'm supposed to be, not only do I need to give him what he gave, I need to give him greater. Any king or queen that you give to, they have to give you greater than what you gave, or else you're not really who you say you are. Anybody who gives me anything, I need to give you something of greater value than what you gave me. And then next time when you come back, if you're the king or queen you said you are, you got to give me back greater, which means I got to give you back greater, and we lift each other up through our giving. So that's the content. I just want to throw that. I wasn't even prepared. I didn't think I was going to go through that testimony. I just want to show you that, because now here we are, Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4. Matthew chapter 6, verse 1. Take heed that ye do your alms, or not your alms before men, to be seen of them. Don't do it to be seen, right? Don't do it to be seen, right? Don't do it to be seen. You might be seen, but don't do it to be seen, right? It doesn't say take heed. See, remember, we got to get the context right and the facts right and the culture right. It doesn't say take heed that ye do not your alms before men, period. No, it says take heed that ye do not your alms before men to be seen of them. Otherwise, you have no reward from your Father which is in heaven. So if the only reason you bless somebody, that you help somebody, that you do what you're supposed to do, is because you're trying to make sure that everybody says, look at me, that's when there is no reward eternally. If your only reason is I need to do this so that everybody in this time period today can see me, then there's no reward in it for you in the future. Right? Right? That's the only reason. If the only reason you put that there, right? Well, first of all, his name's not Matthew. Secondly, it's called chapter 6 because other people later on in the culture, or later on took the culture outside of Hebrew terms, started putting chapters and verses with it so they could be able to track it, right? So we know that this is just one fluid thing that he's written. Anyways, so if the only reason you're doing something is because you need everybody to see it, then that's a problem. If that's the only reason. So a lot of people might say, well, why are you on social media? Why are you on the podcast? Why are you on YouTube? Why are you on TikTok? All these different things. Why would you be on these things? Well, because if you recognize it, talk to the people who are with us, and you will realize that there's a lot more that happens outside of this than happens here. This is nothing more than just to get you to see, to be able to change your life, to be able to hear something. Matter of fact, if you take the classes, you'll comprehend that we go a lot deeper in the classes than we do in this. You're getting icing on the cake stuff here. Right? We had the Early Riser Bible Study. We're going deep in the Early Riser Bible Study just to be able, before we can even go through Bada Shits 1 or Genesis chapter 1, we're going extremely deep in the Bible study to make sure that you can get it, right? Like this is not even, you're seeing the tip, you don't even see what's going on behind the scenes. You don't see how many hours are being left. I told you, I literally was looking for a phone until the way past midnight, right? So I'm up early in the rising again before I even get in front of you guys to ensure that I'm ready for you, and studied up for you, and prayed for you, and making sure I'm doing things I'm not going to be able to do once I take my leave, right? So comprehend, like even what you're doing that shows up in public, right, is never really what people are seeing, right? So don't get upset when people say, "Oh, you're not doing this and you're not doing that." They don't know what you're doing because they have a mentality that's not kingdom, right? Because we don't do our stuff before men. There's a lot of stuff that your mama did for you that nobody ever does. My wife and I were talking about this last night too, how our ancestors went through a lot of stuff and things like being raped and stuff. We have family members who have talked casually, they passed away now, but older family members who would talk casually about being teachers, and they would be on their way to teach students, and they would multiple times had been raped on their way to teaching students, would have to basically get themselves together, clean themselves off, and then try to still walk to the school to be able to teach, because they still had to make a living, and they still wanted the next generation to learn so that the next generation didn't have to deal with the stuff they were dealing with. You hear what I'm saying? Like, that's crucial. That's crazy, right? That happened, but that's what they happened, and they didn't tell anybody until they were older because they didn't want their children hearing about it. But we thank y'all that they eventually told us, because it told us that how deep this stuff goes, how many generational curses had to happen. So they were going through that and never telling anybody. Think about how great their reward is in heaven, right? Verse 2 of chapter 6 then says, therefore, when thou doest thine alms, or when thou do alms, do not sound the trumpet before thee, right? So don't announce it. Don't be like, hey, show up at this time, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to bless all these people. I want you to see it on social media, right? I see so many people that do stuff like that, like, hey, I'm not gonna start showing you how to change. I saw a guy who was trying to, like, change a tire or do something like that, right? It's actually something, well, I'll just leave it like that. He was trying to change the tire, and he was trying to show all these people this way he was going to do the tire, but he's like, I'm not going to do it until I get 1,000 hearts. I need to see 1,000 likes. I need to see 5,000 hearts. I need to do this. I need to, oh man, yeah, keep those hearts going. Keep those hearts. Yeah, I'm starting to feel like showing you guys this. Well, why are you only going to show it to me? Why are you only going to show it to me, right, if everybody can see it? If you genuinely want me to be successful, then make sure I am successful, whether somebody sees you showing me this or not. You see what I'm saying? Right? So he says, don't sound the trumpet before you, right? As the hypocrites do. Now, I say hypocrites, right? The hypocrites. And he even labeled where they are, showed you where they are. He said they're in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may have glory of men, right? So which we said, if they're doing it for the glory of men to be seen, they won't have any reward in heaven. Right? Watch this though, right? From their father, their source, Abba, who art in heaven, Shamayim, on the other side of the Rakia. Now, watch this though. He says, therefore, when you do your alms, don't sound the trumpet before thee, like who? The hypocrites, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, the religious leaders, the people who are supposed to be governing you, the people who are supposed to write this stuff together to make sure that your life is more successful in all these things. He says, don't be like them and do things in the manner that they do, where they have to make sure everybody sees them for every single little detail. He said, do not be like them, right? He says, and he calls them hypocrites, or what we would really say hypocrite. Now remember, there's a hyper and there's a hypo. So he didn't say they were hypercrites. He didn't say that they were crites. He said they were hypocrites. Now hyper means I live over, right? So hyper, if you're hyperglycemic, you have blood level that's high. If you're hypoglycemic, your blood level gets low, right? Or sugar level gets low, etc. Well, hypercrite means you would live above the standard. If you were living, that's the criteria. Hyper above criteria. I live above the criteria. Some people just are ordinary, like we said, they live criteria. Kingdom citizens should be hypercrites. Ordinary people, they just live by the criteria. They just every day do the same thing. But hypocrite, hypo is beneath. These are people that are beneath the standard. You think these are just people to stab you in the back. No, these are people that just live beneath the standard of what they're supposed to. So, if you live beneath the standard, hypocriteria, beneath the criteria, he says these people, when they already live beneath the criteria. They preach a certain thing to you, but they don't live it. Right? They preach a certain thing, but they do not live what they preach. They say certain things, but they do not do what they say, right? That we just talked about that. Let your conversation be yea and amen. Let your yes mean yes and your no mean no, right? The end of Matthew chapter 5, right around, what is it, verse 48, something like that, right? So let your yes mean yes, your no mean no. They have no integrity. Amen. So don't be like them, because they already living bad. Then on top of that, they're living bad because now they got to make sure that everybody sees the little bit that you do. You know why people need everybody to see what they do? You know why it is that everybody wants everybody to know how great they are and how pious they are and how amazing they are, whatever it is. If they're, they could be devil worshipers. They got to make sure everybody knows how great a devil worshiper they are. If they, how we worship people like Lil Baby and all these different people that come out, where it's like, see, they always flossing and stuff. You know why these people have to floss? Because they don't live any righteousness, and therefore they got to make sure everybody knows every single thing that they're going to do. They got to announce it so that people can make sure that they say, see, look, they good. Yeah, they're insecure. They know that they're not living right. They know they don't have anything of value. So, hey, give me all this stuff, feed me all this stuff, and even though it's not going to last that long and I'm going to have to go out and do something else again that will be able to go ahead and or whatever. You say, LOL, you think so? Yeah, I think so. Not I think so, I know so. I know people don't think this about me or whatever, and I don't look like it, but I've been in the music game. Like, I've traveled the world with music. I've traveled with these people. I know some of these people. Not heavy hitters anymore, but I know some of these people. I know people who know these people. I talk to people about what they do behind the scenes. I know what it is that these people cry about in the middle of the night. And I promise you, they're not where you think they are mentally. They come out, they put on the facade for you. If a young man has to, you don't think that a young man seeking attention when he literally takes a whatever stone it is and puts it in the middle of his forehead to the point to where he doesn't think what will happen if somebody rips it out of my forehead? You know what I'm saying? You don't think there's anything to that? You don't think that Drake, who should be confident and comfortable with who he is or whatever, you don't think there's a reason why he can't keep getting into beefs with people and trying to make sure that his writers write stuff that makes him look like he's better than somebody else? You don't think that there's a reason why certain people, like, you don't see them anymore? You don't have to see them. They don't care about being seen. You don't think that Andre 3000 is not worried about your attention when he doesn't have to come out with another album, even though there might be some other reason for it too, admittedly. But you don't think that him being comfortable with the fact that he owns land and he's already known by a lot of people as being one of the most underrated stars? So you don't think there's anything to that? You think that these people are not seeking attention, although they do things that seek attention. I mean, seeking attention because other people are putting them out there. By the way, the contracts that they sign, like, I've seen the contracts. When you sign the contracts with a lot of these Ashkenazi people behind the scenes, you will discover that the contract that they're signing or whatever is basically like, you got to do this stuff that gets attention. If you don't get attention for us, if you don't get a certain amount of attention, we won't let you live in this house anymore. Not all of them own their own homes, right? Like, you remember that, those of you who remember back in the day when they used to have, and they try to bring it back a little bit, I don't know, whatever they call them now, the version of it now, but they used to do Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, and then after that they had something called MTV Cribs, which is basically like the whitewashed hip hop version of what black people do or establish or whatever, right? And only one person was ever honest about it. Nobody ever owned the house. Even on Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, these weren't really these people's homes. They would rent out homes and then show them to you on television, right? They did the same thing for MTV Cribs. And so when you saw Usher's house or whatever, Usher didn't live there. That wasn't his house. Now, I'm not saying he doesn't have a great house, but he wasn't going to show you his house on TV anyway. Why would he want you to know where he lives and to know what he had and to try and rob him? Right? The only one that was honest was Redman. And if you remember, Redman's, where he was, it actually looked better than that. But he said, like, they came early. He hadn't cleaned up. Like, he had his boys over, whatever, they was partying, whatever. So that's why, if you remember, when they went through his house, there was a dude sleeping on the floor. He was drunk, right? And he couldn't get him to get up. So he's like, well, y'all just gonna see him on television, right? So these people live different than what you think anyways. Now, Redman has other homes and stuff too. Don't get it twisted, but he has a home that's in the hood still. So, because he likes to be near the people and the people respect him. So he that's his home. Right? Water was off, the toilet was broken. I didn't remember that part. I had to go search for it again. But these are the things that they don't tell you, right? These are people who put a whole trumpet before them. Know, hey, look at how I'm living. Look at this. Look at that. Well, sometimes contractually they have to do that, or else they're going to lose the little bit that they have. Right? Then it says verse 3. So it says, verily I say unto you, they have their reward. That's the end of verse 2. So verily they have their reward. Matthew 6:2. They have their reward. Now remember, the first one says, don't do your alms before men. Make sure you do it to where you're not worried about putting it out there in secret. And therefore your Father who is art in heaven will reward you. This one then says, these people who are out here, who are your leaders, trying to make sure you see every little thing. Hey, vote for me. Did you not see what I did for this and 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 for this? Right? He says they have their reward. It's not the same reward from the Father. So what is the reward? Is the reward just, some people might go to the point of being held. I don't put people in heaven or hell, but could the reward possibly be something as simple as, okay, people clapped for you today, and now you moved up 1 point in the polls. You have your reward. What does that mean? What did that do for anybody? Right? What did that do for anybody? You have your reward. Verse 3, when thou doest alms, right? But when you, so cancel that out, what they do. When you do alms, and it says what? Let not the left hand know what the right hand's doing. When you're about this, make sure that the left hand doesn't know. In other words, like, don't, and it's talking about a body, not just you. In other words, even within our own people, I don't need to let you guys know. I did this with brother so-and-so yesterday. I did this with sister so-and-so yesterday. I called up so-and-so and this was the conversation. I did a life coaching session with this person. I did a marital coaching session with this person. I sent out a little stipend to this person who helps us behind the scenes. I made sure that I did this and did this or whatever, right? I don't have to let you guys know all that, right? We still run as a body, right? The finger is not necessarily, all this stuff has DNA memory. All of this stuff has stuff that it has to have. They have their own mini brains, right? Every cell has a brain, but the cell in the thumb is not necessarily concerned with the cell that's helping to fire the synapses in the brain. They work as one, but they both got so much stuff that they're doing. They're not worried about keeping track of each other like that to that level, right? So they're working together. They got the same thing. They got the same system. They have the same law. They have the same principles. They have the same natural law that guides both of them to make sure that the body is doing what it's supposed to do. So they're too busy giving to the body and what that specific body part needs to be concerned about trying to compare or trying to say, oh man, yeah, you did that the other day, but I did this. Well, you did that. And that's what your fights be in marriage anyways, right? Can we keep it 100? Those who've been married, those who are married, those who are having sex, with sex is marriage biblically, those who have had relationships of any kind, like, let's be honest, when you're having your fight, you are out arguing each other. Well, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have done this. Well, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have done this. Well, I do this all the time. What you talking about? Well, I do this all the time. That's your argument. Trying to compare. And like we learned in part 4, well, you in debt. If you're in debt to argue and you can't even do what you're supposed to do as a team. You said, doesn't it mean that we should be not boast and that we would be rewarded greater? I don't know. Does it say that? Now, not boasting about it would mean doing it in secret. So I would agree with that, but what is the context of what it says for itself? Right? That's what I would say, so I could agree with not boasting if that's one thing you want to attach to it. Sure, there's many different applications, but the interpretation is what we're going to be about, right? Now, verse 4. Hey, Sister Bonita, how you doing? Verse 4 says that thine alms may be in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret himself shall do what? The reward is open. So a lot of people will be like, well, what have you done to deserve blah, 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 or whatever? You know what I've done? I must have been doing some things behind the scenes to get where I am. Because to get where I am, I'm getting rewarded and open. That's kingdom mentality. A lot of people, how you going to get rewarded? I don't even know anything about you. Tell me everything. Where do you live? What have you done for the community? Put all your stuff on YouTube. Make sure that I know everything. It's like, well, some of the stuff is there for you to see. Right? However, if you see me doing well, right? If you see me in a position, people, you need to get a job and cut your hair. No, you need a job. I don't have to have a job anymore. If I choose to work a part-time here or there just because I want to do something extra, I can make that choice, but I don't have to. And I don't have to work anywhere where they say, well, you got to shave and everything. Well, I don't shave. It's not part of my religious belief. Well, we can't hire you. Well, you know what? Thank you very much, but no thank you. Because I don't have to have that. You might have to do that. Right? But I live of a different standard. I've done enough things in my life behind the scenes and been faithful to enough of the process and have enough streams of income and have taught my family to do things well and have taught my people in my community to do certain things and have been giving myself enough and have traveled the world giving and have made sure that we've given to enough people that I don't have to express all that stuff. So by the time you see me and you say, well, how is it that he seems to have time to just focus on community? It's because that I did these things behind the scenes. So the reward is open. Stop worrying about what people are saying where they say you got to make sure that you fit into their box. When I got this in my spirit, I promise you, I became one of the most blessed individuals ever as far as my thinking and being more free in my thinking. You know why? Because I recognize that if I'm doing things and people are constantly saying you don't deserve it because we didn't see how you got there, what I realize is, yeah, you didn't see how I got there. That's why I got here. I did the stuff in secret, behind the closed doors, and my Father who art in heaven, Abba, he rewarded me in the open. Your reward's coming in the open. What you do is not supposed to be in the open all the time, but your reward's coming in the open. So yes, you're struggling right now. Keep on struggling, baby. I'm telling you, I've been there, right, bruh? You don't know if this marriage is gonna work. I've been there. I worked the process. When everybody saw us smiling, I promise you, we were both dying a little inside, trying to figure out how do you become one, right? I'm telling you right now, like the process, we kept it going, and now we're at the greatest point that we ever have been, and we're teaching people about marriage all over the world. And for a 2-3 year season, didn't really know how it was going to go. I'd say for a 6-month season, didn't know if we were going to be together at all. But we worked it. We worked it. We worked it. We worked it, and we didn't stop working it now that we made it. Right? We worked it. We didn't stop working it now that we made it. We did it in secret, and now the reward is people want to listen to my wife and I at least once a month, just to be able to see us connect. Sometimes don't even care about what we're talking about, just want to see the connection between us, see the special thing. Wives saying, man, I like the way you esteem your husband. Husband saying, man, I like the way that you lift up your wife. Man, I like the way that you're willing to say you submit. Man, I like the way you're willing to say you submit. Man, you love her. Like, these are things that are nothing more than us working the stuff behind the scenes. We gave and we gave and we gave. So when you give, understand that your giving is something that people won't see. And that's why we talk about the foundation. That's why we even tell brothers, men, husbands, you are the foundation. Stop talking about you're above your woman. You are the foundation. That means that you're supposed to be beneath her so that the house can rest on her. And here's the deal. Men, you know this out of your day. Nobody's going to tell you, you did this, you did this, you did this. You got to find a way to function and realize that you're doing these things, but the open reward is there. Now, here's how the open reward works, right? Nobody walks into a house and ever says, this foundation is amazing, bro. Nobody ever says, man, look at this foundation out here. They walk into the house because they want to see how the house functions, right? So you got to comprehend, brother, that you are the foundation, you are strong, and make sure that you have no cracks in it, because the second the foundation is cracked, the house cannot stand. Now in Hebrew, the foundation, the word house doubles for the word family, right? So the house stands on the foundation. You are the foundation, bruh, right? You don't be like sand, which is also in the Sermon on the Mount. That's going to be the last thing we go over in the Sermon on the Mount. Don't be like sand, be solid as a rock. That's in the end of Matthew chapter 7. Right? Be solid as a rock is the foundation. Make sure you have no cracks, and the house is the family. So when people see your wife looks the way she does, when people see your wife is always smiling, when people see your baby seem to be happy, when people see you show, right? All you got to do is show up. You don't even got to see, when people see that all you do is show up, your family is there, they seen your family all the time, they never seen you, they never seen you at the school, they never seen you at the playground, this and that, and you finally show up, they say, oh, that's the missing piece. That's why they look like that. That's why his wife is dressed like that. That's why the cars look like that. That's why the children are always happy. That's why they're obedient. Right? Because you're the foundation. Right? The foundation. And the foundation, heavy is the head that wears the crown. The foundation goes deeper than the house that sits on top. The foundation goes deeper. As tall as the Twin Towers were when they fell, the foundation was deeper. You hear about that? Thank you very much for that, right? This is real, right? So when people are talking about this stuff, don't worry about your alms being done before men, right? Do your alms, or give your gift, give your time, give your talent, give your effort, give your energy, give your finances, whatever you're doing, give them, and don't worry about if they're seed. Because when people see the blessing on you, when people see the anointing on you, right? When thousands of people will show up just to be able to hear you speak on something, that's the proof. That's the proof. I don't care if everybody else approves every step that I've ever made in my life. Heck, I don't approve every step I've ever made in my my entire life, because I'm not perfect. That's not my purpose, is to make sure that everybody else is happy about me. My purpose is to give. Whether people see it or not, I don't do it so that it can be seen. I do it because that's who I am. Right? Whatever your calling is, I don't care if you called to clean toilets. Do it and be happy about it, because it's what you do. I don't care if you called to cook bread all day, every day, and that's all you do. If that's what you do, and nobody's really seeing it, but you're happy in your little bread making routine, make the bread and be amazing at it. Don't do the ordinary and just do what they teach you. Find extraordinary things to do on the bread, right? I've worked at restaurants and even line restaurants and managed different restaurants and stuff like that. Managed 2 restaurants at a time and stuff like that. And I've done stuff like that. I've worked in the military. I've worked for corporations. I've worked, doing Uber Eats stuff or whatever. I've worked doing all types of stuff. I've worked in factories. I've worked in warehouses. I've done all types of stuff. I've worked for myself. I've worked for churches. I've worked, I've gone to mosques. I've gone to, I've helped out Buddhist temples, whatever. I've done a lot of different work. And one thing I recognize in everything that I do, I'm always trying to be extraordinary. I've been a salesman, right? I've done all types of stuff. And in everything I've done, I've learned to be extraordinary. To become extraordinary means that people will begin to give you extraordinary. They'll give you more than ordinary. So be extraordinary, even behind the scenes. When you wake up and nobody sees you, right? For me, from 5 to 8, before anybody even sees me, at 8, from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., I'm putting in work. You see 8 a.m. to 9 to 9:30, and you go, man, that's great that he puts in work for an hour. No. That's what you saw. Some of the stuff I'm talking about, some of the stuff that I bring up is 20 years in the making. Some of the stuff I'm bringing up is stuff that I was thinking about when I was 4 years old, right? So you're talking 35 years in the making. Like, some of the stuff I'm bringing up is stuff my wife and I were talking about 3 years ago. It just popped in my head, and then I had to wake her up and be like, hey, babe, I'm sorry to wake you up, but remember that thing we were talking about? Do you remember this? Do you remember that? Blah, blah, blah. So she can lead me in the right direction, right? Like, some of the, when my wife shows up to you guys don't even recognize. She's been preaching in front of you guys, too, because we've been having these conversations. She just doesn't want to be in front of the camera because that's not her calling, right? So I represent us. You're seeing stuff now, but you're not even thinking about what happened behind the scenes. And that's fine. It's not for you to think about. You don't have to worry about it. It's not your calling. It's not your burden. It's not your life. Amen. Thank you. So anyway, I'm going to try and answer a couple questions very quickly, but I gotta get ready to take my leave. You said, do you preach? If you do, what do you preach and why? I preach whatever is acceptable in this time. First of all, we proclaim the kingdom of heaven, because the kingdom of heaven is not only at hand, but it's inside of you. And we preach that we proclaim the word of Yah, kingdom mentality, kingdom law, marital law, natural law, universal law, constitutional law, laws of attraction, law of first mention, law of equity, common law, admiralty law. Did I say those already? I don't know. We teach law. We make sure that people are comprehended. Am I in Toronto? No, I am not. I haven't been in Toronto in years. I actually want to go back at some point. I don't know how traveling stuff is working back in Canada now. I haven't been to Toronto specifically, I think, since my teenage years. Loved it, though. Basically, Toronto to me was like being anywhere in the States, just about. Or, any cities, any big cities in the States. You said, brother, user C99 says, is the Bible historical? In my opinion, yes. We know that, just places. First of all, we know, what Bible are you reading? Are you reading the Bible that's only 66 books? Are you reading it where you know what the culture is? Are you reading the Paleo Hebrew? Are you reading the Ethiopian Bible? That addresses a lot of stuff. But yeah, a lot of stuff that's in there, including even the prophecies. If you know the culture and you know how the stuff works, you'll see that this stuff literally matches up, line upon line, precept upon precept. We even know the time periods and the names that are mentioned and the countries that are mentioned. We know these things were in existence. So, yeah. Even though I don't believe it to be his story, because there's a difference between his story and our story. So when people start talking historically, I got to know who your sources are, who you believe is people who we should listen to for history. But yeah, I believe the Bible to be what we call historically. You said, so biblically, when they said had multiple wives, there are people in the Bible that talks about having multiple wives. Quick question for you: Did Yahshua HaMashiach, or did Yahweh, or did the Most High, did he approve having multiple wives, or did people have multiple wives? And what did Yahshua HaMashiach say about having multiple wives? Did he say he was okay with it, or did he say that the way that it was created was there was supposed to be one husband and one wife, two becoming one? If that's what he said, I'll go off of what he said, rather than what somebody in the Bible might have done, whether it was right or not. You said, do I know anything about Freemasons? Yeah, I know quite a few things about Freemasons. Freemasons are people that we're not about entertaining or helping too much. I mean, some of them are trying to use what they're doing, but you know, there's a lot of wild stuff in there that a lot of people that go into Freemasonry don't even know, because a lot of them don't study, they just join. Then they learn these things, and then afterwards, it's kind of like being in the gang. Like, you know, you get in the gang, you get in there, whatever, you rep whatever your stuff is, right? You represent whatever your stuff is, whatever, and then you get in there, you got to get beat out, right? And so the question is, are you willing to get that whooping to get out and to be ostracized and not have these people who you thought were your brothers be your brothers and start over from scratch? A lot of them aren't willing to do so. You said just because it's in the Bible doesn't... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in the Bible. Like, there's a lot of warnings in the Bible. Like, you know, Saul is King Saul, the first king of Yashdale before David. He's a cautionary tale. Just because he did things in the Bible doesn't mean you should repeat it, right? Dinah, when she married, you know, because a lot of people think she was raped. The Bible says that the person she was with loved her, and that they had mutual consensual sex, and therefore they were married. And when they got married without the family's consent, when the two brothers, Simeon and Levi, when they came together and they killed off everybody after they had all the men get circumcised so that they couldn't move that well, that's not a great thing, right? It's in the Bible, but it's not something that we would say, hey, go ahead and make sure that you start saying people they can come in and then get them to be off and then kill them off, right, and commit genocide. We wouldn't be about that. You said well, you're saying what? God don't hold secret meaning. Elohim doesn't hold secret meanings per se, but there are things called mysteries, and there are things that he says are going to come off as coded, because he says to certain people, it's for you to know the mysteries. He said, so you know, look at Matthew chapter 13. This is Yeshua HaMashiach once again himself speaking, right? His disciples say, why are you always speaking in parables, or why are you always speaking in stuff that seems like it's coded? He said, well, it's not for them to know. He said, if they're not in the kingdom, then stuff I'm speaking is not going to sound right to them, because they don't live by the culture. Do I believe the Bible is an absolute truth? I believe the original form of it is an absolute truth. I believe the original culture of it is. I believe that a lot of people have taken the interpretation and given you many interpretations. There should only be one interpretation with many applications. But I believe that there's only one interpretation, and that interpretation should be what we use to apply it in our lives. So it depends on what interpretation that you're going off of that I would either say yes or no to. As far as the actual, before it was called Bible, from Biblios and all that stuff, the actual Tanakh and the scripts, and even the things that are written after Revelation that exist that people don't want to talk about, I believe those things to be true. Yes, I do. You said, do bad people get punished for their sins? I believe that anybody gets punished for their sins. A sin just means to miss the mark. So there's consequences to every action. There's great consequences, there's negative consequences. So if somebody does something that's bad, then they'll receive bad consequences. You have free will to do whatever you want. You have unalienable rights. You have the right to do whatever you want. However, there are consequences. There's law to be able to make sure that we're protected, that everybody's rights can be protected. So if you do something that you feel you had a right to do, but it infringes upon somebody else's rights, then there's consequences that come with that. And that's something that everybody believes, because everybody believes if somebody were to kill their family member, you probably believe, even if you think they should live, you probably believe there should be some consequence. You probably don't believe you should just hug them and just let them go on the street. Right? What is my view on grace? Well, I won't go by my view. I'll go by the Bible's view. Grace is necessary. Grace is amazing. Grace is, if we're dealing with the Greco-Roman terms that we like, grace is charis or charisma. So if you meet somebody named Karen, it's funny we use that name to mean people that don't seem to extend grace, because Karen actually means charis, or like grace, to be graceful. So, you know, grace is something that's necessary. Grace is something that's powerful. Grace and mercy are amazing. Grace helps us when we fall and when we can't contain the law within ourselves. We're graced because being even covered with the blood, if you will. Grace in and of itself, though, is not great, because even grace and faith and all these things are great, but faith without works is dead. Works are necessary to go with grace, because works is what you, when you say you're in your calling, you're in your works. So grace is necessary, most definitely. You said thanks. I appreciate that. 189. The Real says, do you recommend reading the Bible cover to cover, going section by section to KJV? I recommend always reading the Bible. I would recommend first making sure that you have the culture correct. Somebody says, please explain humility. Humility just means to lower yourself to serve. Humility doesn't mean to be a doormat. It just means to serve. And service is great, because it says the meek shall inherit the earth, right? In order to inherit something that belongs to you already, really, just be willing to lower yourself. And really, humility is just like this. One thing I say all the time, one of the reasons why I have been great and I'm going to be successful and leave stuff behind me for my successor successful, is because I've learned that the more I learn, the less I've learned, right? The more I thought I had it all together, the second I'm like, man, I got this Ahaba thing down, the love, the culture, all this stuff, then I see something else, I'm like, oh man, that's just the tip of the iceberg. And so that humbles me, and it allows me to be able to inherit. The more I thought, oh man, I got some land together, I've got some property together, I've got this and that, I learned legally, somebody can get you on this if you're not careful. And I realized, man, I'm not even close to what I thought sovereignty was. I'm still but I'm on my way though, you know. You said, how do you ensure that you have or are learning the right culture? Study the culture. Study what the people said themselves. Like, for example, people will say stuff like, why do you say America's about slavery? America's the reason that everybody's free. They fought against slavery. They left the tyranny of a king. I said, well, let's just listen to the presidents and what they had to say. Let's just deal with like the 4 people that are on there, right? This is culture. I'm not trying to just bash these people or bash people that support these. I just want you to know I always look for culture, right? So study what the people said. That's one of the easiest way to look at it. What is your culture? Well, what did the people do? What did they do? What did they say? What did they write? So look at Mount Rushmore. Mount Rushmore is literally on native land that the natives there want back. They're trying to buy it from the natives because they know they were wrong to take it from them. The natives said, we don't care if you give us $2 billion. We just want our land back. We don't want the money. Give us our land. And Mount Rushmore has 4 presidents that all were some of the worst people towards natives in the history of mankind. Now, Andrew Jackson probably worse than all of them, right? But he's not on there. But George Washington is somebody that was so anti-native, he was killing them and everything while he was an Englishman, that he was killing them while he was an American. He was killing them while he was fighting against the British, and he fought them so much that he was killing them off instead of fighting the British. One of the reasons why they had an issue with beating the British, besides the fact that they sent all the black people back to be slaves so that the black people wouldn't get in their heads that they could free themselves by fighting, one of the other reasons is because he basically was fighting natives while fighting the English. So he was trying to kill the natives off and wasn't focusing on them. Right? After that, you have Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson literally said that it was all right to kill natives, and he said the day that the natives raise a hatchet or against us, or in other words, try to fight us back, he said that's the day that we will eradicate them. We'll wipe them out. After that is Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln hated natives so much that while the Civil War was going on, he was sending Union troops all the way to California to kill off the Khalifa people. The Khalifa people, black, copper-colored people that were over in California who called themselves Khalifa because they themselves esteemed one of the queens that they had and deified her and made her a god, right? And so they worshipped her. They called themselves Khalifa, and he had people going over to fight them. He was killing natives off. He was killing natives off all over the place. He himself being part native, he's a Melungeon. He was white because of his father, who was a slave owner. Then his mother, who was a slave, she was Melungeon. She was half black African, half black native. So when you deal with him, you're dealing with somebody who was against his own people, killing them off, right? Was killing them off all over the place. Did so before he became president, kept on doing it while he was president, kept on doing it throughout the Civil War, right? Because one thing that Americans are about is killing off natives. Even if it's going to make them lose a war, they're going to keep killing them off, right? Even the Confederates were using natives to their advantage, right? And teaching natives to enslave their own people and enslave black Africans as well. Because I'm Cherokee, so I noticed the Trail of Tears, that's really difficult for me because not only were my native people being dragged over and forced to walk all those miles, but my native people had enslaved their own black brothers from Africa and were bringing them too because they had been taught by their oppressors to have slaves, right? So Lincoln did that. Then after that, last person, Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt has a quote, right? And I'm not going to quote it exactly. I don't have it in front of me, but go look for it on Google if you like. Teddy Roosevelt basically has a quote that goes something along the lines of this. If 9 out of 10 natives were killed, I really wouldn't care. And if somebody killed a 10th out of 10, as long as I didn't see it to where I could wash my hands of it, I'd be cool with that too. That's what, so you see what I'm saying? So if I know the culture, that those are the presidents who set precedent, then how could I not say that the culture of America is racism? That it's not genocide. If they want to still celebrate Columbus Day, right, how could I not say a country that wants to celebrate Columbus, who literally was, so he wouldn't have to waste bullets and waste money on bullets, instead of shooting newborn babies in the head, he had them use hammers to kill them. And they want to worship that man? That's the culture. So Prison to Pipeline is easy for me to be able to see. It's not even that hard because I studied the culture. The culture told me that Prison to Pipeline is easy. Prison to Pipeline, they were doing that from 1789, from 1776, from 1712, like from 1619, and we can go even before that because Squanto, who they talk about 1619 meeting and him randomly being able to speak English, Squanto was a slave who was taken over to Europe, and he was a Spanish slave and he was an English slave and brought back. And he was a Sambo. He sold out his old people to these Puritans that came over. So even before 1619, they were already enslaving people in what we now call the United States of America. So culture speaks for you all day, every day. All right? So culture speaks for you. So how do we heal? Well, first of all, we admit culture is well, first of all, you admit that there's something that needs to be healed, right? People are talking about the symptoms. First and foremost, what is the disease? And the disease comes from a sickness. So the uneasiness we have about race is because we're not willing to talk about the sicknesses. Racism is a sickness, right? So let's admit that the sickness exists. You don't heal a sickness by not admitting that it's there. You don't heal a sickness by ignoring it. We talked about that in our Sermon on the Mount series too, right? You can't heal a sickness, right? You can't, if you got cancer, don't just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to ignore it and I'll be better. You might feel better for a little bit, but if you got cancer, hey, where is it at? Right? If it's in your breast area, all right, well, we know that we need to get you some oxygen. Let's make sure that you get some seeded natural grapes, and that'll help you with oxygen. You might have some lung issues. Let's make sure we give you some things that oxygenate the body that make you more alkaline. Also, let's make sure we focus it. Well, if you have breasts, and by the way, men have breasts too, right? So all of us, when we have breasts, if you have breast cancer, well, why don't I make sure that I deal with stuff that has any citrus, lemon, lime, grapefruit, etc. It's shaped like the breast. And if you cut it open, it actually looks like the inside of the mammary gland. So why don't I not just make sure that I give you that, and we give you the other stuff to make sure oxygen levels are there. When you have cancerous cells have only 40% of the oxygen that they need. So we're going to wipe this out, and we're going to go directly to the place, and we're going to eradicate the cancer. But if I don't act like you have cancer, or if I don't even admit that you have cancer, or we just say we're just going to ignore it altogether, then the cancer builds and builds and builds and continues to eat and continues to give other cancerous cells, because cells divide. And cells grow. So now you got cancerous cells giving birth to cancerous cells that tell the new cells that this is your new norm. We're going to make sure that we eradicate that so you don't have to worry about it. Right? So the same thing with the cancer of racism. First and foremost, let's admit that it's there. Now that we've admitted it's there, let's start looking at people like Dr. Joy DeGruy. Joy, first name Joy, last name DeGruy, DeGruy, who wrote a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Right? Instead of PTSD, she says we have PTSS. And she's basically puts a point to where all of us are dealing with issues that are generational, and especially black people, but really all of us have never gone through not just healing, but we've never actually sat down on the couch as a people. We've never sat down and said, why is it that you whip your children instead of discipline your children or spank your children? Why you always got to whip them or whoop them? Why do you got to send them to a tree to grab a branch and make sure that they get whipped still like a slave? Where does that come from? Why is it that your women are still objectified, and yet at the same time are told whenever they try to say, well, if you're objectifying me, well, I'm going to find power in that, right? Then all of a sudden, but they're wrong, but then somebody else can use it. What does that do to a woman, to where her own man will chase somebody else who's not even her, will chase anybody else who dresses like her, talks like her, and then says, well, she's more submissive, but then never deals with his woman and tries to figure out why she's not submissive to a man that's not worth being submissive to. Like, why is it that a black man feels like he's not heard? right? But a black woman says she doesn't need to hear him because he's this, that, or whatever. But then we'll listen to a white man to get a paycheck, or we'll listen to a white man to be able to get in a play. Like, we have these issues. Why is it that black men take care of their children, statistically speaking, more than any other man in the country, percentage-wise, and yet it's always black men that are not the fathers and everybody else is the father? When we deal with the fact that there's a sickness there, then we can start having real conversations. Once we have real conversations to deal with this and deal with the stress levels that people live with, the things that are causing heart attacks and the cancers and the cyst and all these different things that are coming in your life, all right, even hip issues and spinal issues have been contributed to the way that people have all the stress on them, right? Diabetes and all these things that we're eating because we're eating comfort foods because we need to feel comfortable in a situation environment that hates people because of the color of their skin and stuff, and then blames other people who maybe are trying to come out of that hate and trying to come out of those generational curses, but we still hate them too. Now we can start saying, all right, now that we've had this, we've had it to where you can heal yourself. Matter of fact, as black people, have you even been allowed to come together as a diaspora and say, this is our standard again? We want to come to our standard again. Before we start saying we're going to mix with somebody else who knows their standard, can we figure out our standard so that now when we come together, we can look each other eye to eye? And now let's have some real conversation. And now let's start discussing being grafted in. And now let's start discussing, how to the other person, like if you've been in a relationship, if I do marital coaching, and somebody starts talking to me and they start saying, my husband doesn't do this and my husband doesn't do it, or my wife is always this, she's terrible, she don't listen. You know what I say? I say, okay, I want you to shut up and listen. All right, I've listened to you guys for a long time. Now, I don't say it like that, but that's in essence what I'm going to tell them. Like, okay, I want you guys to shut up for a second. I've heard y'all argue. I've done one-on-ones. Y'all keep blaming each other. I want you to listen. I'm going to tell you what this person means, but I'm going to say it in your language because men aren't taught to speak like women speak, and women aren't taught to speak like men speak. So, sis, shut up for a second. Out of love. I love you, but shut up for a second. All right? Here's what your man is telling you in your language, because he doesn't know how to express it, but you don't know how to speak man either, so y'all are missing each other. So when he's saying it, basically everything boils down to him to two things. He doesn't feel like he's heard, right? And he needs to do things before he feels them. He doesn't see you doing what it is that he likes to be done, therefore he doesn't feel like you feel him. And then when he says something about it, he doesn't feel like he's heard. Hey, bruh, shut up for a second. I'm gonna tell you what she's saying. She don't know how to say it in your language, but you don't know how to hear her language either. When she's saying you ain't doing blah, 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 or you don't love her anymore, this and that, what she's saying is she doesn't feel secure, number one. And number two, she's saying that she has to feel things before she does them. So since she never has felt anything or seen you give her feelings, or heard you say I love you, or heard you when she's mad or whatever, she still wants you to give her a hug, you don't give her feelings, therefore she ain't trying to do nothing. Now that we've established that, let's come together. And you got the same thing going on with racism. Everybody's calling out. It's amazing. I see and look, I'm proud of the work of a lot of people, but a lot of people, all they do is come out and just call people out. You're racist, you're racist, you're racist, you're racist, you're Republican, you're Republican, you're Republican, you're Democrat, you're Democrat, you're Democrat. You're Christian, you're Christian, you're Christian. You don't act like this, you don't act like this, you don't act like this. Nobody talks about the actual sickness. What does racism even mean? ISM on any word means it's a system. Race is a competition. At first, race was about a competition between different European powers trying to beat each other. Then they had other slaves and people that they had within their own European cultures. They were killing each other off. Then they started looking and finding out, wait a minute, people that are melanated, that are colored, they can do things in the sun and last longer than other people can. Therefore, black people became valuable as slaves. So now it was a race to have more, not only more land, not only have more gold, not only have more prestige, not only have more, have more of the earth to own, but now it became a race to have more slaves that could last longer. Therefore, black people had to be put on the bottom. Now you got to change what the Bible says. Now you got to say these people are evil. Now you have to say this, right? That's why. So racism is a system based on competition to get slaves, which black people got caught up in them trying to beat each other out. It wasn't even about them. It was about, we try to beat each other. We'll use our own people. We'll put our mamas on the line. We'll have our sisters marry slime balls so that we can have these two kingdoms come together and we can have more power. Then all of a sudden, oh, there's these black people over there. They can help us out with this. Okay, all we got to do is make sure that, because now we have white people that are going to look and say, well, these are human beings. They might be black. They might be painted. They might be colored. They might be whatever. But we used to look up to these people. They taught us what we know, and they're still human beings. Okay, we got to teach them different. And by the way, just go look up historically. Look up your boy, not your boy, but look up that man, King Leopold. King Leopold I, King Leopold II, King Leopold III, especially Leopold II. When he went into the Congo and did what he did to them, if you don't know about it, study it for yourself. When he went into the Congo and did what he did to those people, way more people than what died under Hitler's watch with the Jews. Way more people. I don't care if they say it's 10 million people. Way more people in the Congo died. We talking some people will say 10 million as a minimum number, right? Could have been 20, 30 million. Don't know. Right, genocide, killing people off, chopping babies' arms off and stuff. I had stuff that was taken off the first TikTok channel because I put stuff out there showing, like babies missing arms, mother's breast chopped off, men with all their limbs chopped off, stuff like that, because they didn't meet the rubber requirements to get them the rubber they needed for things like that. Right? Thanks, Minister Tamara. Right? These are the things that we're seeing that were happening. Right? And you know what he had to do? His troops, before he sent them over there, because the government didn't even want him to send them over there, he actually tried to say that he had a business and tried to say that this business now was centered in the Congo. And therefore, he was able to use money he was making as a king to fund the business, and then he used the rubber to pay himself back. He didn't even give it to the country. He paid himself. Remember, see, so we're thinking this is about all of them. No, then he taught all the soldiers. He had soldiers that stopped working for the kingdom that he was over, and he said, work for this corporation. See these terms, this corporation that's really a kingdom over in Congo. And he taught them soldiers, he sent them back to boot camp, and they taught them that these people, they literally taught this. You're going to come into contact with people. They're going to look like human beings. They're going to talk like human beings. They're going to act and cry and stuff like human beings, but they're not really human. They had to reteach them, right, that there were people out there, there were human beings that were not human beings. And then they sent them out there, right? That's what Hitler did. And there's recordings out there. You can look this stuff up. Look up interviews with Nazis that exist after the war. I'm not even talking about why they were there. That existed, that lived after the war. They interviewed them and say to them, why is it that you thought it was okay to do what you did to the Jews? Why? And they still have nothing in their heart. They're like, I mean, that's what. And they tell you straight up, that's what we were taught. We were taught that Jews were nothing. We were taught that they were the problem. We were taught that they aren't even really human beings. So if you kill a Jew, I mean, you just kill a Jew. They still walk around and they have children and grandchildren who have been taught by these people. I mean, yeah, I killed a Jew, but I mean, they were just a Jew. A Jew's not a real person. That's what they believe. I'm not saying I believe that. That's what they believe. And Hitler said right above, when they would put the people in the ovens, literally putting human beings in ovens and getting ready to melt them down and kill them, they would put them in the oven, and when they put them in there, you know what they say? You know what it said above there, right? And I know somebody's going to say that's not the exact quote. Yeah, the exact quote is actually worse. So go look up the exact quote if you want the exact quote. But basically, his thing said, I want to raise a generation of children who have no conscience. They had to raise them. They had to teach them that. Right? They had to raise them to be that way. So you have to understand, like, if we don't address the actual thing, we can't start the healing, and we can't put things in order. We can't put teachings in order. We can't disregard certain teachings if we don't admit that this stuff happened. Because if we don't admit that it happened, you'll keep teaching your children the same thing over and over and over again. I know I said I'd take my leave, so I'm gonna take my leave off of this. You guys have heard this before over and over again, but let me just say this example one more time. There's an example that I like to use, right? There was a man who had a wife. His wife, right? There's a man, he has a wife. His wife continues to make chicken. It's amazing, but she always cuts the chicken in half. So one day he said to her, baby, your chicken is amazing. Why is it that you cut it in half, though? Now, I never see anybody cut their chicken in half. She said, baby, I don't know. I do it because my mama does it. So they're a young couple. So they go and they talk to mama. Mama's around. And he said, they invite her over to the house one day. And he says, Mama, your daughter makes amazing chicken. She said you taught her how to make it. Question, she cuts the chicken in half. Why does she always cut the chicken in half? She said, baby, I don't know. I do it because my mama did it. Well, grandmama was still around. So, right, there's a young couple. So grandmama's still around. So they go to grandmama and they're talking. And they say, hey, grandmama, your granddaughter makes amazing chicken. She cuts it in half. She said she doesn't know why she cuts it in half. I asked your daughter. She said she doesn't know why she cuts it in half. You do it. So I'm asking you, why is it that you cut the chicken in half? She looked at him and said, baby, I don't know why I do it. I do it because my mama did it. Well, you know what? They were blessed because Big Mama, since they were so young, was still around. So they had this celebration. They got together. They sitting around the table, and he says, Big Mama, I just got to know this. This has been bothering me. I know it's a small thing, but it's been bothering me. I just need you to help me out if you can. Your great-granddaughter makes chicken and she cuts it in half. I asked her why she does it, and your granddaughter says she does it. Or I'm sorry, your great-granddaughter says she does it because your granddaughter does it. I asked your granddaughter why she does it. She said, I don't know why I do it. I do it because your daughter taught it that way. I asked your daughter why she does it that way, and your daughter said she does it because you taught her that way. Can you please, Big Mama, I'm depending on you. Can you tell me why is it that you used to cut the chicken in half? She said, baby, in my day, ovens weren't that big. So if you was going to make chicken, you had to cut it in half. In other words, they were repeating something that was no longer required, right? But they were repeating it just because it was taught. So the second that he learned that, right, and the second that that his wife learned, the great-granddaughter learned that they were only repeating something because it was taught, because it was necessary in that time, now all of a sudden, she didn't teach her daughters that they had to cut the chicken in half. And the chicken still tasted fine. And so a lot of us are still doing things because it was required for racism. A lot of us are raising our children, right? Raising our sons. This is Willie Lynch. Raising our sons to be daughters and daughters to be sons. A lot of us are still putting women in a place where they can't be protected and putting men in a place where they're never heard. Willie Lynch stuff, right? And when we recognize what happened, and we recognize that we're still living by things that used to be there, we used to have to do this to function. However, we're no longer even need to be that. Even in the slavery that a lot of people are still in debt, they don't have to live like that anymore. Now it begins to change. So you talk about the healing process. We didn't even get really into the healing process, but how it's really going to need to happen and why it needs to happen that way, that's why. Willie Lynch said it himself, that we reversed their nature. We reversed not only the nature of the black people, we reversed even the nature of how white people think about black people or supposed white people. He said we reversed their nature. And he said the only thing that would have to happen to stop it would be an anomaly. He said the anomaly is simple. The anomaly, hear what I'm saying, the anomaly is simple. What is the anomaly? The anomaly is this, right? The anomaly is that husbands would be heard again and put back in their place, and wives would be secure again and be able to be in their place. Right now, wives are trying to secure husbands, and husbands are trying to hear wives. If men would be heard again, and women would feel secure again. By the way, that doesn't mean a woman can't be heard at all. It doesn't mean that a man can't feel secure at all, right? But what I'm telling you is that problem is men don't feel heard, women don't feel secure. And men need to do things to feel things. Once they're heard, they will start doing things so that they can feel like they're heard again. And women need to feel secure so that they can begin to do things so that they'll feel secure again. Once that's put back in order, a lot of healing starts in the black community. A lot of healing starts in the world. A lot of healing starts in the diaspora. All right? Thank you all for being on. I appreciate the king and queen in each and every one of you, even if you're not living inside that kingdom or queendom yet. I appreciate the potential king and queen in each and every one of you. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, a.k.a. the Shadow Band One, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being the voice of the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Thank you so much for being on. I got to take my leave. Real quick, those who are on YouTube and other places, you'll be able to see this in the description box for your videos. But just real quick for everybody else, I'm going to pop this up so you can see if you'd like to be able to contact us. This is a number that you can text us at if you'd like to have any further conversation. We have our classes going on right now. These are all on Zoom. Mondays are marriage. Tuesdays are monarchy. Wednesdays are sovereignty. Thursdays, natural medicine 1. Fridays, fibroid cysts. Saturdays, Hebrew characters. And every Monday rising early riser Bible study. If you want to rise up early with us and be extra, do something extraordinary, like we're talking about 6:45 a.m. Eastern or New York time. We have 6:45 a.m. or New York time. We have our early riser Bible study session. All right, the classes will be 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time. Both of those things that I just talked about, they'll be on Zoom. October 30th, 8 o'clock p.m., we're going to have our Brothers in Black. Brothers, we're asking that you come dressed in solidarity. That'll be on Zoom only. Sisters, you can come, though, as well, to be able to hear and to support your brothers. And you can invite anybody you like. October 31st, we'll have our special session on Hallows Eve. We'll have it online, but we'll also have that on Zoom as well, so that our children can be part of the conversation if they would like to be, and be able to ask questions and talk. And we'll have even our young Prince Solomon on to be able to discuss things. In the month of November, we're going to start looking at marital contracts, and we're going to start looking at more fervently getting into baptism. Those who want to be baptized in the name of Yahweh, Yashvah, Ruach HaKodesh in different places in the country. We'll start setting that up more and more. Come December, and come December 18th, we want everybody to be prepared. December 18th, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern in New York time. That will be our Women in Red event, and we're excited about what the Most High is doing with that. We're asking for sisters to come dressed in red in solidarity, and brothers, you are invited too. Please feel free to invite anybody you would like to as well. The classes, we ask for a certain donation minimum. It's only $90 donation per class, and we're thankful and grateful to everybody who would be part of that. And then for the all the other stuff that I mentioned, that stuff is free. You know, we don't. If you want to give a donation, sure, but we're not asking for anything for those. So thank you so much. We appreciate the King, Queen, and each and every one of you. And our prayer is that you not only be hearers of the word, but you be doers of this word as well. In the name of Yahweh Elohim, Amen. Feel free to call the number that's above me if you're watching on TikTok. If you're watching this later on YouTube, just look at the description box. All our information is on there for all our videos. We're thankful. We're grateful. We are you can still go to kofi-40.com. We're making updates to it though, but everything that you need throughout the end of the year is on there for you to be able to catch up to what we're talking about. And if you'd like to, if you'd like to be able to give a gift, Mystic, just look at the. It's actually $find Kofi1. My name, find, well, FIND-KOFI, the number 1. But you can also just look in the description or the bio, our bio, and you'll be able to find information on that. But just thank you. Make sure whatever it is that you're giving for, by the way, if you're giving any donation, that you tell us what it is for. And it's not just Cash App that we have. We have Cash App, we have PayPal, we have Green Dot, we have Apple Pay, we have Zelle. So if you'd like to be able to give in any way, shape, or form, feel free to be able to do so. And we thank you in advance for doing so. I feel like there's something else I'm supposed to say, but I can't remember it. I think we did a pretty good job covering everything for the Yah's Land Project. If you're interested in finding out how you can help us to be able to become a community that comes together and lives together as one mindset. We're working on owning land. We already have people that are already giving towards that, and our goal is to be able to get, bare minimum, our prayer is 50 acres. That's what we're asking and seeking for and looking for, 50 acres of land by October next year. So if you'd like to be a part of that, learn more about that, contact us. You got the number up here, 410-714-5078. Also, too, we have another number if you want to go to our YouTube channel, which is #FindKofi. You can find us on any platforms by putting in #FindKofi, FINDKOFI. But you can, our YouTube channel is literally, our new one is literally named #FindKofi. All right. So thank you. I think that's about it. We appreciate the King, Queen, and each and every one of you. I'm going to get ready to take my leave. As always, this has been Pastor Kofi, a.k.a. the Shadow Band One, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice to the voiceless, speaking the unspoken. If you need to reach me as well, also, you can just DM me, right? Or look on the website and find the email address and email me. Either way, if you're hitting up the numbers, we also have another number, 202-599-7312. Again, that's 202-599-7312. Again, I say 202-599-7312. Last time, that is 202-599-7312. We thank you so much. We'll be back on 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern New York time this evening. If you can't join us for that, we'll be back on the Rising tomorrow, 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern or New York time. Thank you so much for spending time with us. We appreciate you all. And as always, this has been Pastor Kofi, a.k.a. the Shadow Band One, Pastor Servant of Christ, where we are always changing lives one mind at a time by being a voice to the voiceless and speaking the unspoken. Until I have the great privilege, opportunity, and responsibility of being in front of you all again, please remember, as always, that you are loved, you are necessary, you are majestic, you are fearfully, wonderfully made, and you, which is all of us working together, we shall be the reason this world changes for the better, bare minimum. We'll be the reason why people who are in this system no longer have to be of it. Shalom. Take care of yourselves, Israel. Talk to you later.